feedback because there's going to be quite a few people joining us.
How do we mute the phone?
I usually at the very bottom of the screen, if you scroll down, there'll be 3 little icons that pop up. One's a microphone, one is a camera, and the other is a telephone. If you hit the microphone, it'll turn it on and off. And
if I don't have any of that, what do I do?
*6.
Yeah, because we'll mute you, and then if to unmute, you have to *6.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Graham.
Hi, everyone.
Bobby, you've got 17 people on the call, including me, and I'll be dropping off after a bit, but because this is Margie and Brandon's show, but you've got a good group.
Great, thank you.
Brandon, how's everything going?
It's just wonderful. Thanks, Graham. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, this is great. My 3rd week on the job.
Boy, you're an old veteran.
I know. I feel like I've been here 4 weeks already. No, it's been going great.
Good.
Councilmember Richards, I'm sure you want to wait for Mayor Potter.
Yeah, I think the mayor was on that other call, that last meeting, and so he's probably going to jump off it pretty quick.
Oh, I see.
In fact, there he is.
What's this one?
Hey, guys.
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Excellent. Chip, what did you think of the meeting? Or Bobby? Yeah, I didn't think it was at all good. And they had that one woman just natter on definitely about,
it's so frustrating, Mayor. We're being, I mean, they want to make the vaccines available for the workers coming in. I think that's important, but I don't understand why they're being so unwilling to test, and it's keeping us in the purple tier. So I'm writing a letter on behalf of the city managers. It'll be nice, but I just don't understand why they won't have mandatory testing for the 35,000 people coming in. I don't understand the logic, the lack of logic.
I don't either.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that was a long time that the woman from United Way went on. That was a long match.
Yeah, again, it was very sad, but I mean, again, it's
hard to follow. Dr. Moreno is so choppy. It's really hard to follow.
Yeah, we're still getting, 4,500, well, up to 4,500 doses a week. I mean, it's still a drop in the bucket. I don't know. I was disappointed as usual.
The stats were very disappointing when it was 3 to 4 months before they were going to get to a certain level, and then another 4 months to get to another level. It was 16, almost a half a year at one point to get through partial to next stage. I mean, it's crazy. Yep. The math just doesn't work at all.
And it was so flipped. It was 27 weeks. He goes, well, it's like 27 weeks.
Yeah, half a year.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I agree with Supervisor Lopez that these, whether whether the workers are in Yuma or here, there are residents, but I just don't understand the reluctance to test. I just don't. There's so many tests. Like they said, I mean, they're not getting the number of people that they were a few months ago at the testing sites. They've got tons of tests. They could do the rapid tests as they come into the county. It's very, very simple.
So with that venting, why don't we go ahead and convene the ad hoc committee for outdoor public seating. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is kind of an open forum here where we'll have some discussion about certain elements of outdoor seating and perhaps touch on the possibilities of some long-term outdoor seating. What would that process look like? What would that end project look like? Brandon, would you want to take the helm here?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thanks everyone for coming. This is our first foray into a more public-facing ad hoc committee on this important topic. Staff did prepare an agenda for today. Hopefully everyone has a copy of that. The discussion topics will focus first on the current state of outdoor dining and parklets, some of the hot topics that we see coming up, like aesthetics, operation, and compliance. And then the next, once we finish that topic, the topic will be the future of outdoor dining in the city. What do we want to do, if anything? What would it look like? What are things we need to consider? And then, of course, room for other matters and talk about what we want to see on future agendas. From here out, the plan is to keep this open forum, public meeting style, so that we can get as much participation and true transparency as possible. And so staff will be taking notes along the way here. So as we get further into this current state of outdoor dining, we can try to refine and make recommendations to the full city council. And then, of course, as we talk about future operations, we'll take notes and keep that in our back pocket when we actually start to develop a program, if we do go that route. With that, Chip, do you want to add anything to sort of the purpose of this from the city's perspective?
No, I think the agenda is great, self-explanatory. We do have just 1 hour, so maybe not spend too much time on the current ops, but really kind of move into the next phase. What I would suggest, Brandon, is maybe we could introduce some of the members that have been with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem since the beginning, and maybe I can do that if you don't mind.
Please.
Tim Toomey, resident representing the CRA, among others. Marnie Waffle. Marnie is our principal planner, senior planner, and stewarded this since the beginning. Jenny McMurdo, who's calling in. She could not be on the video today. Graham Robertson, upper left there, resident, member of the CRA. Mary Crow, who is down in the middle there. She's a hotel owner, manager, and a restaurateur. Myself, Todd Tice, is a retailer in the village. Tony Salme, I don't know if Tony's here. Let's see, Amy Herzog from Visit Carmel, top left. Amy, can you wave? Thank you. And then Tess, what was Tess's last name? I forgot, I'm sorry. We're representing Lloyd Shoes, another member of retail that Todd suggested we add. So those are the kind of the permanent guests, if you will.
Thanks, Chip. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Richards, I guess I'll defer to you. Would you prefer staff to try to walk the group through the agenda? Did you want to walk the group through the agenda? How would you like to proceed with the meeting?
Brandon, I don't have a problem with you walking us through it. I do think, though, the one thing we might want to have some discussion about is the closure or the curfew of 10 o'clock being imposed, what the criteria was for that, what the thought was behind that, and whether that's appropriate or not.
Okay, if you'd like, we can start there and then jump into our agenda.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, great. So as we mentioned at the last city council meeting, staff did put out when it would reopen for outdoor dining, we put out an advisory along with some reminder of the rules and regulations that we're going to be moving to a uniform closure of the outdoor dining spaces. Last seating at 10 o'clock p.m., everyone out of the dining spaces by 11 p.m. The genesis of this was back in December, the first city council meeting in December. The council had a consensus that there should be a uniform closure time. There was never a consensus, however, as to what that uniform time should be. There were various times that were discussed, various schemes of, last seating, when everyone has to get out. But there was a general consensus that there should be some sort of uniform closure. So staff went back to watch those videos, the various times that were thrown out, and based on the different use permits and times that other restaurants and establishments around the city have, we felt that 10 o'clock was the most equitable, not only for the businesses to be able to try to generate some revenue during this really difficult time, but also to allow for the folks that live in and around these commercial districts to have an expectation of what time activities would stop downtown. So to be totally transparent, the time was selected by staff after analyzing what the council had discussed, trying to find an equitable solution for both businesses and residents, and frankly for enforcement and to be able to know truly when they walk up to someone what time that they were supposed to be closed down, because we have use permits that have different times all over the city. So that's how we got to where we're at. Certainly open for any conversation or discussion as to what may be a better solution or anything along those lines.
All right, I'd open it up to community members and anybody else on their thoughts. My question was going to be, Brandon, what happened to the fact that each use permit comes with its own closures associated with a use permit, and then why not? I mean, it seems to me the enforcement element of that would be just the same whether it was a parklet or an actual restaurant that was open should be closed at a certain time.
Yeah, and when staff considered that, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. So all the restaurants and establishments do have a specific time in their use permit. The concept there is that we're in sort of extraordinary times. The outdoor dining is a new feature altogether. So to create some sort of equity among the program where somebody may not, maybe blocked out because the opportunity is so small right now with the COVID and people not being able to use their indoor spaces, to create an equal opportunity across all establishments to create that uniform time, certainly recognizing that some folks have earlier and in some cases even later use permits. But we were trying to create a sense of equity across the program.
That combined with the fact that the noise is a little different from outdoor to indoor dining and late at night. So
Correct.
Just want to get that out there.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon, if you see a hand go up, you can acknowledge that person.
Okay. I don't see any hands at the moment. If you're on a phone, if you want to raise your hand, I believe it's, or you can't raise your hand on Google. I'm used to Zoom. I'm coming from a Zoom culture. You can just unmute yourself.
I'm raising my hand.
Let's go to Bobby Richards first, then we'll go to you.
Okay.
With that, one of that universal time, I think that was a good idea in the beginning, but maybe we might have done that a little bit. We can always tool things and make them a little bit better. I think that some of the challenges of that are the places that used to close down at 7 that are now open till 10. That could adversely affect the residents living in the downtown area. And so I kind of like the idea of the businesses running with their use, with the exception of Sadie's, which can stay open till like 2 o'clock, but maybe we can back them down to midnight. And so, because 2 o'clock would be pushing it, I think, completely outside. But maybe if we back them down to midnight and then allow the restaurants their use. What time is it normally for them? 10 o'clock?
It varies from establishment to establishment. So that was part of the enforcement issue. And the same thing with the consideration of places like Sadie's, where there may be a sense of inequity if we're having police officers or code enforcement go there at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, saying you need to close down, and others are not, or vice versa.
So maybe that's where the universal idea of the restaurants at 10 o'clock would be. I'm just throwing it out there, Mayor. What do you think?
Mr.
Were you
Richards,
trying to say something?
yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't, again, bars are still prohibited in the tier that we're in. And we did allow some of the bars to become restaurants with their obligations to serve food and the like. Some bars that didn't serve any food. And so that was, again, Mr. Richards, the notion behind the 10 o'clock last seating, the 11 o'clock closure in the current environment that we're in. But you're hitting on something that is going to be key for discussion for any kind of a permanent program because of those potential impacts on oh, here comes Tony, on the downtown residents.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right, Parker, you're trying to say something? I think that's you.
Yes, thank you. I'm here. Thank you for all, saying what you had to say. There's just a few topics just to touch on. Some Chip just said, bars are not allowed to be open. However, unless they have sought out to take wise use of the relief that the ABC is offering, one of their regulatory relief acts that they put forth was if I were to provide food, then I could operate. So the only bars that aren't allowed to be open during the purple tier are bars that don't serve food. But because I got a contract with the food provider and am providing food for my customers, I can operate. That doesn't mean that I'm a restaurant now. It means I'm a bar that's using the Regulatory Relief Act from the ABC in order to operate my business. So, I have an opportunity to generate some revenue, which is, the main goal here. So there's kind of a touchy situation there. If I didn't serve food, then no, I wouldn't even be in the conversation. But because I have gotten a catering permit from the ABC, I'm within my rights to open my bar as long as I provide food, which I do. Talking about giving everyone an equal opportunity and let there be equity through the village, that doesn't put Sadie's anywhere in that conversation. As y'all heard from my speech last week and quoted in the Pine Cone, the memories begin at 10. If I close at 10, I might as well not even open. And we talk about noise problems and whatnot. Is there data to support that specifically for my business? Maybe some of the restaurants that are like the pockets across the street from residential homes. I've got some letters I can share, or maybe you don't want to have me read them off to you on this meeting, but I've got neighbors as close as 100 feet to the end of the block and right across the street. They'll all testify that pre-COVID and during, there's no noise pollution that's bothering them whatsoever. So, I haven't had the police come to support that I've been getting noise complaints pre or post-COVID or during COVID. So I don't see where, I feel like it's more like a preventative thing from things that have happened in other parts of the village, but not necessarily what's happened at Sadie's. So again, that's not equitable. That's like one bad cop and we should defund all police. That's just not the way the world should work. Then you talk about some of the reasonings that you've decided to have a universal closing time was to make things easy for staff and the enforcement. I've worked at Sadie's for almost 13 years, been enjoying it for a lot longer. It's been there longer than everyone on this call has been alive. I don't need help enforcing when I close. I've never needed assistance. I've never, had to have somebody come tell me I need to close. I operate. I go within the law and I close my bar every night. So I don't know why it's some big strain on staff that I'm opening and then closing at my prescribed time. And it's nice to Bobby to set forth that maybe I stay up until midnight, but is that even enough? I mean, that's still closing down 2 of my busiest hours of my very unique business. And I mean, why do coffee shops get to open at 6 a.m.? Aren't there people still sleeping at 6 a.m.? What if their dogs are barking and they're talking too loud while they're having their lattes? I mean, what's the difference? It's not like I'm having a blowout fiesta every night and there's noise pollution throughout the village.
So Parker, if I might,
data to support that I am.
Parker, one of the advantages to this is people do get to talk with no 3-minute limitation. On the other hand, I would like to get some other people's opinions. So I certainly hear where you're coming from. I think both Bobby and I do understand your uniqueness. So are there others that would like to opine on this issue at this moment? Mary? Looks like Mary Crow, you had your hand up.
Yeah, someone brought this up earlier. I think one of my concerns again is enforcement if they were staggered. I know that the police have had to do some of the enforcement previously, and that just doesn't seem realistic. I don't think. I mean, I know they're busy with other things at night, and I'd hate to think that their time and attention was taken up with enforcing, the restaurant operating hours, and there's not an enforcement officer on duty at that time. So I think that would be my concern.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Let's hold off for a minute, Parker, and it's not a rebuttal kind of conversation we're having. I'd like to hear from a couple of people
I
in
just
the
wanted to add
industry.
something, but if I get
That's
an
nice,
opportunity,
Parker.
please
I don't
call
want to
on.
have to mute you. Okay. Is there anybody else? All right, Parker, looks like you can have the floor again, briefly.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Hold off for a minute, Parker. It's not a rebuttal kind of conversation we're having.
Not really rebuttal. Am I muted or am I not?
No, but somebody's talking over you. Whoever's sending
Anybody? Can I get in, Rich Pepe?
Yep, Rich, go ahead.
If everybody could hold on for just a moment, if you're calling in through the city's website, there is a 30-second delay. So you have to be cognizant of that when people are talking. That's why it sounded like somebody was talking over Mr. Parker. So just to let you know that does happen.
Thank you, Margie. All right, Rich, Pepe, I think you wanted to speak, and then there was somebody else trying to talk after that. On the other hand, maybe I'm wrong.
Mr. Mayor, it's David Fink. I'll speak whenever Rich is done.
You can speak now.
Well, first off, on the restaurant hours of operation, I think the 10 o'clock last seating and 11 o'clock out, I believe works for most of the rest. Hello?
No?
Yeah, you're still on, David. Whoever's next.
Okay. I think that works. I understand Parker has a very unique situation, one of the very rare bars in town. And, him giving last call at 10 and then closing at 11 would definitely cut into his business. So I think under special circumstances, you should consider extending his hours. And when I've been walking home from LeBear's or down from Luca to LeBear's later at night, I haven't heard a lot of noise there. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Was that Rich Pepe trying to speak?
Yeah, can anybody hear me? It's Pepe.
Yep.
You got me, Mr. Mayor?
Gotcha.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. In my opinion, I think, and nothing against Sadie's or anybody else, but I think at this moment in time, it needs to be a one-size-fits-all guideline. If we have some people opening up one time and closing up another, and I'll say this about how many seats somebody's allowed. Some people are allowed 22 seats and some got 28 seats. I think it just adds to a lot of animosity between the restaurateurs in town, and we're seeing it and feeling it and hearing it. I think it's a one-size-fits-all. There's either an opening time and a closing time, and otherwise you're going to get into some serious issues here. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So what I'm hearing is there does seem to be some consensus around the 10 o'clock consistency issue as far as closings go, and then also there does seem to be some sympathy out there for Parker Logan, which I would concur with. Perhaps that's something we could have a discussion with Parker about, see if we could come up to some reasonable settlement instead of trying to reach for, perfection. Parker, maybe something good that we could find as a middle ground would be something we could discuss offline with you. I'll take that as a yes.
I just had to unmute myself. Yes, I would like to further discuss. And since I'm on the line, I just wanted to finish what I wanted to say about the closing times and enforcement. I mean, pre-pandemic, all these different businesses all have different operating hours. And it's never been like the enforcement of staff or the police or code enforcement to go around like, oh, did the bakery close at 8? Oh, did the coffee shop close at 7? Like, we operate our businesses and we all close at different times. So a universal one size fits all, I don't think it works in pandemic situation, in a non-pandemic situation, in any situation, because we all are very, very uniquely different in the way we operate and who we operate for. Thank you.
Thank you, Parker. And I would agree. We are certainly living in different times, perhaps different times that necessitate different protocols. So let's see where we can go from that. All right, Brandon, I'm going to turn it back to you, and you can walk us through these items here. The kind of a status report on where as far as aesthetics go.
This is Bashar. Can I
I'm sorry,
speak?
Bashar.
May I speak?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. As always, I do really appreciate your efforts and working hard to, to support the community. For the closing time, I still actually would like to understand the logic behind why changing the closing time based on permit for each one individually, like how this relates to COVID. I still cannot comprehend that. Instead of like working more to generate a little bit revenue to survive, it's basically closing earlier in a hard time where everybody is actually suffering to generate revenue to sustain. I still see also like everybody keep missing the point that if we all gonna be treated equally, as if we assuming everybody is their expenses is equal, like the same rents are equal, which is not. I pay the highest rent in the town, and my permit allow me to take class seating 11 o'clock. And for COVID, you can imagine how hard it is to do that. Although like landlords, not as you know how they are trying to help, but where we are right now, everybody needs help. So why don't we stay as is? I just don't see where's the logic behind me closing 11 or 10 o'clock. What would this affect? Before I was open, I cannot in a harder time. I think you get the point. For Sadie's, which is my neighbor, I can see the suffering there. Like closing 10 o'clock, where his business starts after 10 o'clock. I mean, that means as if you tell him just shut down. He needs to operate late. That's how his business generates. If any one of us will be Parker at this point, anyone, if we'll be our business, Parker's business, will be like him trying to fight to survive. And I hope you consider that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, Brandon, let's try this again.
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, just real quickly, we'll run through a little status update on the current state of outdoor dining. And then if you or Councilmember Richards or anybody on the call wants to follow up on anything, but I think the idea with this bullet point was just to give everyone an update of where we're at, what we're doing, and then we can move on to the future of outdoor dining. So with respect to aesthetics, lighting, colors, materials, staff has been working hard to try to work with everybody who has a parklet. Obviously, we have had some design guidelines that have gone out. Being that the program was stood up quickly, they're not as thorough as we probably would imagine to see if we go into a future program that's more solidified. But we have been working with the operators of these parklets as best we can for materials and things like that. And obviously, one of the considerations we have when we get into awnings are, fireproof. Is it safe for people to sit underneath? So we've been doing our best to work with everyone on that and to keep them all looking like something we all want to see. We get calls, and our code enforcement team of one will go out and communicate to the operators, try to get them back within the parking tees. If something is not built properly or they don't have a permit for an overhead construction, we do require building permits for any hard overhead construction. Obviously, if you're doing the little PVC poles and some sort of fabric over the top, we're not looking for building permits and engineering drawings there. But if you're doing framing, metal roof, things like that, we're going to want to see building permits and engineering drawings to make sure that people are safe within those spaces. So that's the aesthetics. The operation, we talked a little bit about hours already, so I don't think we need to go back all over that again. I talked about covered spaces. Obviously, everyone's required to manage the distance between people. And enforcement and compliance, like I said, Bo has been doing a great job walking around, communicating with people. It definitely takes up a lot of our time. It's important. This program is very important to keep the economic viability of our restaurants and other businesses in the area. So we think that it's a good investment of our time, but it does take up quite a bit of time going around and doing the compliance checks and working with people to make sure that they're set up properly. So we appreciate everyone who has a parklet that has worked with us and has continued to be a good partner with the city. So we really want to thank everyone for that. It definitely has created a challenge for parking on the streets. Obviously, up to 2 spaces taken up. So we have seen some parking pushed out into other businesses, in front of other businesses, in front of residences. So it's something, as we look at the future, we're going to have to consider the impacts of that on a permanent basis. It definitely has displaced some parking. But for the temporary use of it, it does feel like it's working. And so, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Richards, that's our update on the current state of outdoor dining at the parklets.
Brandon, could we just touch a little bit more on the signage issue? I've heard several calls from miscellaneous members of the public, both restaurateurs and citizens, that perhaps some of the signage on certain institutions are a little excessive, perhaps a little bit too much advertising. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner served at such hours in large banner forms, plus cocktails to go of certain types in banner form. I don't know, those are normally allowed, and I don't want to have that linger as a residual of this whole process.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you're absolutely right. And we recognize that those signs, as they are non-conforming, the saying goes, desperate times, desperate measures. And so I think we've been a lot more lenient than we would normally be, given the circumstances right now, to try to help with the businesses, the retailers, the dining establishments, the wine tasting rooms. We're trying to be as helpful as we can with these regulations, understanding that it's all temporary. The impacts will go away. Certainly when we look at the outdoor dining concepts for the future, that's going to be something we take a lot harder look at, and we won't be looking at the leniency in that respect. I know Chip has fielded quite a few calls about that as well.
Exactly. I think it's more a matter of becoming more clutter than it is anything on some institutions, because of the fact that they've gotten kind of carried away with it. I think we probably know who we're talking about here without naming anybody in particular, but I would appreciate if those people would have a little bit of a visual conscience about this when we talk about the aesthetics. I don't think it helps with the program at all if we're going to talk about extending it in the community when they see what is basically sign blight in certain cases. Chip?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would propose that when we move out of purple into red tier, that the A-frames go away. I mean, that was something again that I did under my authority, and it is it's not attractive, but we did it again to help support the restaurant community. But the A-frames go away, the extraneous signage go away, the banners, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there is hope that again, if we can increase increase testing and increase the vaccinations, that will be in red hopefully a month from now. So my suggestion to you and Councilmember Richards is that that you endorse a hard break that I'm now proposing, that by a month from now, March whatever the day is, I don't know, 10th or something, 9th, that's the end of the kind of the free-for-all signage, sir.
Yeah, I would like to chime in on that and agree with you. I don't think that we need to do it from a tier standpoint. I think a time standpoint, because I think people are pretty aware of outdoor dining and they know the situation. It's not new. We've had it for almost a year now. And so it's nothing new. We don't have to advertise it like that. And I would like to see them, if anything, get upgraded to a different sort of a level where we're losing that. Okay, that was just our beginning, first blush. Now we're going to become a little bit back to our roots, and we're going to get a little bit more, we're going to follow the rules a little bit closer. I mean, we did try to follow the rules pretty well. And I think that most restaurants really did come along, after that first couple of months. But now it's time to really tighten it up and look sharp.
Councilmember, I think, what, the more you talk, the more, Amy's on the line. Visit Carmel has done a great job with their marketing through the RID, Visit Carmel through the Restaurant Improvement District. Mr. Ahn has been promoting the delivery service provided by the restaurant workers. There's enough information out there about the fact that we are open for restaurant business, for takeout and for outside dining. So, maybe we just call it at the end of the month, or, after Valentine's Day. It's going to be a big 3 or 4 day weekend coming up. So I would turn to Brandon and I'd want to get the word out to the restaurateurs, give them some time to comply. But again, it's a matter of taking things down and taking them back inside. So it's not that big a physical change to their operation.
Anybody else wanting to provide input on this topic? Tim, perhaps from the Residents Association side of the world?
Yeah, I agree that, as far as the look and feel of the village, it's taken on, something that we definitely want to, embrace as temporary. And, like Brandon's saying, really trying to, make sure that we help, the restaurants and everybody out. But I think, there's got to be a point where we start, returning to, I think as Bobby, said it so well, kind of the look and feel, of the village. We've obvioly veered, quite a ways away from that, in my opinion. But I mean, some of the outdoor dining areas do look, nice. I mean, we started out with, pretty rugged look where everybody was kind of doing their own thing, but it seems like it's come together. But I still think that there is a lot of room for improvement aesthetically, and as we get into kind of the future, and the permanence, I think that's where we need to really have some serious discussions, obviously with Brandon, and his team and his involvement in making sure that that we really do it right. So I think bottom line is that we want to definitely help out the the businesses as best we can. Knowing this is a temporary thing, I think we're just going with the flow here to make sure it works.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, it's David Fink. Can we talk again?
Yes, you can. It's an open forum.
Thank you. I don't know, 6-9 months ago, I had sent some design guidelines to, I think Marnie and maybe Chip. And, I really think it's time, after seeing a few of these parklets come back open, to really, I agree with Bobby and the last speaker. I mean, without waving our own flag, we spent a lot of money to make our parklet at Luca very attractive. And, I realize that some of these restaurateurs either don't have the funds to do that, or they think this is just going to be temporary when we reopen. But as we get to the red tier, we all know that the opening is only going to be a small percentage, and we don't know when we're going to be 100% open. So, I would encourage Brandon and Chip and you, Mr. Mayor, to, sooner than later, try to get some guidelines in, and I hope we will, have permanent outdoor seating. So that's my 2 cents for now.
Appreciate that, David. Anybody else?
Yes, it's Amy. From a marketing perspective, I wanted to bring up that, having the outdoor dining is definitely an asset for marketing the destination. And we even in the short term, in this, in the next coming months, we are going to be leaning into it even more, celebrating it, positioning the destination as a place you can come and experience in a new way for people who have been to Carmel, but they haven't seen this more lively European style, outdoor al fresco kind of experience. So the sooner that it can look in a way that we're all really proud of, the better. We can be careful with what we're showing, but and I just want to bring this up just for, I know we're going to be talking about long-term decisions, and that's important. But even for the short term, I mean, we're going to promote what we have as soon as we responsibly can do so. So that's, in the plans for the next few months.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, can I just make a quick comment if I might?
Certainly.
I think that the topic or the question was on signage and A-frames, and I would agree with with Chip and Bobby that I think we need to set a date where we get back to starting to look like normal, and whatever that specific date is, I would suggest it's certainly no later than the end of February. But to be fair to everyone, I think we need to set that date, set it in stone the best we can, and move on from there.
Good, appreciate that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly send some communication out from our office even as soon as tomorrow, just to give everyone a heads up. I think from staff's perspective, we would be supportive of that. I mean, I would agree. Just in my walking around and seeing it maybe is a little bit out of control, and I think that everyone knows that it's there now. And we can certainly get something out. I mean, if it's 10 days, if it's 14 days, both of those are times that I see over and over again when it comes to sending someone a notification they need to get into compliance with something. 10 days is a pretty reasonable amount to come into compliance with something.
All right, sounds like we have some consensus on this topic too, which is good. Appreciate that. Is there any other discussion on this before we move on to just some preliminary discussion about long-term possible outdoor dining?
I have so I think it's a challenge for the restaurants to stay open at night with our lighting situation, because Brandon, can you tell me right now, what do we allow them for lighting, and is there anything that we can do to help in that area?
So right now, and Marnie may have to back me up on this one, but my understanding of what we allow right now is they have to be solar powered, pretty dim lighting. You can't run power from your building across the sidewalk to the parklet to have like big overhead floodlights or anything like that. It has to be pretty minimal lighting. Our code talks about lighting on the outside of structures and things like that being downlit, shielded. So I think, again, we're in a bit of a situation where it's a bit stretched, but we have been pretty serious about the solar only, which is a pretty dim light. I don't know, Marnie, do you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the idea with the lighting is that it was for safety, and we really wanted to be a little bit flexible if the restaurants came up with a way to do that, since each location is different. I think one of the things that we found is most successful is the solar lighting that is that comes like attached to the umbrellas. And that seems to provide some good safety lighting within the parklets. But, otherwise, solar is the standard right now. And we do want to make sure that folks are safe. So if there is a particular issue, we certainly want to hear about it. There hasn't been a lot of interest in lighting. I know we've talked about this a couple of times, and I haven't heard from a lot of restaurants any kind of safety issues.
Is there any restaurateurs or anybody that would like to speak to that? I just threw it out there thinking that might be an issue. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
I would share a little bit. Hi, this is Meredith Knowles. There is a lot of little, small solar exterior lighting that's available from excellent manufacturers that if you wanted to as a group, you could have what they call a quantity discount on a variety of styles that would fit your needs. in the warm Carmel color, 27 Kelvin. So people in the city know how to get in touch with me, and I would love to make that happen for you all if you have an interest.
Meredith, you are a Carmel treasure. Thank you.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Appreciate the suggestion. Very nice. All right, anybody else? All right, anything else about this current state? Any questions about what's going on these days? All right, we're sort of running a little bit out of time, but let's go ahead and just kind of kick off the discussion about what long-term usage or long-term sidewalk dining could look like. I guess the question is, do we want to consider that? I would hope we would. But also, I think one of the things we ought to discuss is what will it actually look like physically when we go back to business as normal? For example, I think the wineries would go back inside, so there would not be any outside sidewalk tastings because they've already been designed and built for tasting purposes. The other issue is what about the usage of sidewalk dining by people who already have the opportunity to outside dine elsewhere on their property? And then thirdly, what is the cost of this going to be? What's the cost for a permit? Is there going to be a fee associated with right-of-way usage? Those kind of things. So it's a pretty diverse topic. I know this is an ad hoc committee. We can meet anytime we want. I'm not adverse to meeting again next week, so we get some substantive dialogue for discussion in this before we go back to the council meeting, because we'll be having to report out on our progress to date when we go to council. Bobby, would you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd love to. If you want us to do a standing meeting at Monday at 4 o'clock, I would be on board.
Next Monday is a holiday. I don't know how everybody feels about that. I'd prefer to have it like on Tuesday, maybe, if that's okay. What do you guys, heads north, south, east, west, thumbs up, thumbs down? All right. I'm seeing some interest. Good. All right, then let's try to put something in for next Tuesday. I'm looking here just quickly. The moment it's open, so I'm wide open. Let's go. Want to just go ahead with a go for next Tuesday at say 4?
Okay, we can do that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, great. Appreciate that. Todd.
Okay, do we want to talk about now in this forum with everyone here some of the parameters and some of the things we would think about regarding the long-term parking, or do we want to wait and do that in the ad hoc committee?
I think it'd be a good idea to get anything out here now. This is the new ad hoc. This will be the group that we'll be meeting with constantly. So let's go ahead and get everything on the table today. Just kind of throw it at the wall right now and say everything will stick, and we'll bring it back for discussion at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to make that suggestion. If we could use our time to essentially lay out the agenda for next week's meeting, that would be helpful for staff, and then we can prepare that and send it out to everybody.
So I think I hit on the two things. Todd, go ahead.
Well, I just regarding that, the few things that I'd be looking at is like how many parking spaces, how many restaurants would be allowed to have the parklets, long term. If we did decide to do long term, I would think there certainly would have to be a cap and how many spaces would be able to be taken up, because as we know, in our normal climate, parking is a high priority here, and it's very hard at times for people to find spots. And some of our locals that do come into town end up leaving town because they drive around for 25 minutes on a given Friday, Saturday, or Sunday and go back because they just gave up and couldn't find a spot to park. So, and I'm concerned about how many spots would be allowed for that, and then also what the fee would be. And I've discussed that a little bit before, but I mean, there certainly would have to be some kind of significant fee, I would think, going forward with this. So those are the few things that I'm concerned about.
I'd agree, Todd. I think that's one of the reasons why I said what some of the parklets. Marty, you might know how many parking spaces are now being taken up by wineries, wine tasting. Do you know?
Wine tasting, it could be between like 10 and 12.
Okay. All right. And then I think also those that if we had a policy direction at some point on whether if you had outside dining opportunities now without having to go to sidewalk dining, is that something that we would then say if you get outside dining as it exists, it's more of a policy question for council, but it is something that I think we should give some consideration to, that issue right there. And then I'd be interested if we did kind of a doodle poll or something of the restaurateurs saying how many of you would actually be interested in investing in a long-term solution. There may be some cost element to that. That's what I was bringing up a few minutes ago that may preclude others from saying, I'm not going to go to that expense if I can go back to my original dining options inside.
And I think the thing that could hit Brandon is how many seats would be available in these parking stalls? Because, you know, I think that this group has discussed this before. If every restaurant in town puts out another 20 seats, well, I know it's another 1,000 seats added to the town. And I don't know if our infrastructure can handle that. And so that's something that we need to probably talk about is how many seats would be allowed per parklet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point there that Todd and Bobby are bringing up, that, you know, what's the scope of this? Because there are, you know, it all depends on how, and I like your idea, Mayor, of, you know, kind of getting a feel for what the current tours think, because in one situation you could say, well, you know, I as a restaurant owner, I want this because they're going to increase capacity. But then you got to balance that with, you know, with our infrastructure. But in just kind of looking at the existing restaurants right now, I mean, there are some that already have outdoor dining, you know, and the park. So, I mean, the parklets really were put in place to help with the limitations of indoor dining. So once, you know, all of that stuff, we're back to indoor dining, then it's are the restaurants that have, like, you know, Terry's and Portobello, and, you know, there are others that I'm not picking on them, but others that outdoor dining, you know, nice outdoor dining, yeah, as it stands. So, you know, that maybe, you know, stays the way it is. But then, you know, there's going to be this probably debate on, well, I want more seats, you know, in addition to that. Somebody, you know, this whole fairness thing. But I think the scope is really important. And I have another question, Brandon, for you and your team, maybe, you know, come back to that, you know, currently, is there a cap in Carmel with the amount of restaurants right now? I mean, if I wanted to open a restaurant and there was a gallery that just moved out and it was available, could I go in and, you know, get a permit to operate, you know, a restaurant out of that gallery, assuming I, you know, brought the thing up to code to do that?
And assuming you get enough water.
Yeah.
So just kind of thinking, you know, when we go down this permanent idea, it's probably, I mean, I think it's going to be difficult to say, hey, in the future, what's that going to look like? You know, we need to take that into account, that if a new restaurant comes into town, if everybody says, okay, today, I want one or I don't want one, you know, we can deal with that. But then how do we handle, you know, new restaurants that aren't, you know, currently if they want something like that? So I think the scope and the limitations on our infrastructure would be really important.
Good.
I like the idea of the limitation, because that's going to reduce impacts on the downtown residents. And you will recall that we did discuss trying to get someone on the group that was a downtown resident, so they could help us gauge impacts, and whether it's, you know, vehicular, you know, cars getting around in a busy season, or noise impacts. I think that's really continue to be important, Mr. Mayor.
Good point.
Brandon, there's another thing before we go too far down this road even, is what would the ABC, I mean, the ABC was really light on letting us do this. I don't know if they're concerned for a more permanent situation, or if the water board is a concern for permanent. Like, some of the branches that we'll have to talk about, and also the possibility of bump outs, which I think both the mayor and I really like. What would that look like?
Yeah, I had taken some notes, Councilman Richards, already about the water. I think when the infrastructure was coming up, because just like a new restaurant, if you're adding 20 seats at 20 restaurants, you're essentially creating several new restaurants. So, you know, what are we doing with water credits and things like that? So I'll have to look into that. But then Similarly with ABC, I did get the sense in talking to the licensing professional when we were talking about picnicking in the parklets that there is a way to get there, as long as it's the restaurant's property and they're willing to take on the liability, and people are restricted to just dining in that area. So I think there's a way to get there. It's just a licensing issue.
The other item that's come up from Councilmember Ferlito is ADA access. So I have, Brandon, I have ABC, I have ADA, and I've got the Water District as all outside regulatory agencies that may have maybe providing direction on this as well.
And then the blueprint for what you can do from MPWMD is there already. It's basically you can't intensify the usage. You can move seats outside, but you have to close down the inside. Basically, it's that simplistic, really. But you can go ahead and move seats outside. Except that you cannot intensify your water usage in any way.
So that, I think that in and of itself will impose a limitation on the amount of people who are interested in doing it. If people can't actually increase their number of seats, there's less of an impetus to even want to go outside. And to that end, I think making sure that the restaurateurs understand that maybe when we do a doodle poll, it would be very helpful to get a sense of how many are interested in what we're really talking about. One other thought that occurred to me is that whatever the fee was, it would be nice if it were adequate to maybe manage some sort of shuttle service if we were able to use the north lot in town, which would be good for Carmel overall, just to get people to start using parking a little bit further out.
I think that's it. I'd love to see a shuttle program for employees, Mary. And again, you know, we can go up to Vista Lobos right now or the North Lot, and they're both not full. And so there's a great, you know, we've talked about, you know, hospitality as well. Hotels, you know, do the hotels, does Amy have to buy a bus and drive it to wherever the hotel workers live twice a day in a shuttle service kind of a format? I'm joking, Amy. I'm joking.
But this might be a way to maybe even fund that and make something happen that a lot of us have thought is a great idea for a long time. You know, a year ago, I would have said maybe it's something that the hotels can fund, but everybody's going to be in economic recovery mode for quite some time. So maybe this could be a potential solution. And the other thing that I was going to say, I think that we'll start seeing examples from other communities, because there will be many that are faced with a long road ahead in terms of economic recovery and failed businesses. And we'll start to see maybe some creative zoning and get some ideas from without as well that apply to this whole issue.
Excellent.
I think the other thing that I'd like to add, if I might, Dave, is the parklets and the bump outs, or whatever we want to call it, on a longer term basis. How does that meet up against the general plan, and how does that look? And if there's anything that needs to change in the general plan, amendments or the like, to have permanent dining outside, that needs to be considered too.
Absolutely, good suggestion.
Along with that is if you have a parklet, are you going to have sidewalk seats in the future on a permanent basis? Talking, you know, would we allow sidewalk dining and parklet dining at the same restaurant, making it kind of difficult to walk through that sidewalk on a busy summer day?
And I think maybe to add on to that is that the other commercial owners on either side of that parklet, or those parklets, need to be considered as well. So I don't know, it's almost on a case by case basis. So it can get tricky pretty quickly.
Yep, I agree. My thought is that the term parklets would disappear. I don't think we've ever been really keen on that verbiage. So hopefully we can go into cafe, sidewalk dining, or bistro dining, or something like that. Lose the ugly parklet word. It's right up there with piglet. So.
Yeah, but in all due respect, the outcome is the same.
All right.
With dining on the street.
Okay. We can discuss. All right. Anybody else? So we're about ready to run out of time here. I really want to thank everybody for this forum. I'd suggest that you get your contact information into Chip or into Brandon, and so that we can go ahead and make sure we include this broad range of participation we have at this meeting. I think that's good idea, very important. So I really appreciate everybody's participation. Todd?
Yeah, I just want to circle way back to the beginning here. I want to confirm where we are with Sadie's and Parker. Are we you guys gonna talk to him and figure out maybe a different plan if he can be more like midnight or last call 12:30 and out at 1, or is it still 11 for now, or where are we at with that? I mean, because it did sound like from David Finken from Bashar, his neighbors, and sounds like from the neighbors that live close by that there haven't been that many problems, and he is like very unique in this town as far as the only one that's an actual bar with some pizza. But I think that we should give him some consideration. I just want to make sure we kind of know where we're at as we end this. Sorry.
Well, I think what we agreed was we would be more than willing to help Parker out here as the council, as long as he's willing to help himself. And I think when you said unique, so you get a unique circumstance, and he's a very unique character. That's what I enjoy most about him. Honestly, I mean, he's he's the best form of public entertainment I've seen in a long time, guys. So I really enjoy it. So I may have been in the system a little too long. Maybe my sense of enjoyment's a little perverse, but still, Parker, we're going to try to take care of you, buddy. So relax. All right. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday at 4, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Tuesday, 4 p.m.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks all.
A lot of good suggestions. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.